All right, time for part three and the concluding remarks towards the end of this part three. Part three in the book is on evaluating language education policies and programs, and it's good to see Atip here in the room. So let's hear about your study about potential applications in language education for Q evaluation.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to share Adrian. Is that okay?
Absolutely, go ahead.
Okay. Okay, can you guys hear me okay? Uh, okay. Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for your time. My name is Atip Thamvijit. I'm from Mahidol University, Thailand. Nice to meet all of you. My chapter is about using Q methodology for program evaluation purposes. This chapter is not research. It's a bit different from previous chapters. It's more like a conceptual work where I explicitly introduce the use of Q for language program evaluation purposes. Actually, as we know, Q methodology can serve a wide varieties of purposes, and one of them is we can use Q to evaluate program and of course language program, which is an emerging field in applied linguistics and language research. And as a language teachers and lecturer and program administrators, from time to time, one of the things that we have to do is evaluating our courses, evaluating our program. And this is because we believe that program evaluation would, guide us in terms of lesson planning, informed teaching practices, addressing learning outcome, and of course, identifying, student satisfactions and, respond to different kind of needs. And program evaluation can also help us address the questions of what is best and of course areas where improvement is actually needed. And it serves as a platform for reflections on practical applications of evaluations as well as empirical findings from these applications. Why Q methodology? Okay. In my university, for example, at the end of each course, at the end of each semester, student will be asked to evaluate the course, and they will present with a list of Likert type items. And what we got was more like a level of satisfactions. They had to respond to different items, but what we haven't learned much is the area where improvement is actually needed. And also there's a problem with social desirability, because they know that we expect them to rank highly in every items. That's why they most of the time the result would be like strongly satisfied with different aspect of the program. And many times when it's come to assessing stakeholders' view of the program, the methods are often limited to Likert type questionnaire. And in addition to traditional methods, Q is a good reflective tool. It gives us useful informations about different aspects of the program, especially since we are using forced distribution grid, like we force them to say good thing about the program. At the same time, we also force them to criticize the program. So that can help us identify where uh, you know areas where improvement is actually needed. And this is not the first time we talked about program evaluation in relation to methodology. It has been done before in the past. Okay. And these are some good examples of how Q can be used for program evaluation. We can use Q to look into students' view of a course, and as well as to assess student preference concerning different aspects of the program. When I say different aspect of the program, I mean when you evaluate the program, you may look into different components. For example, teachers, the content of the content in the program, classroom environments, even students themselves, Okay, you can also use Q to investigate student view of different learning activity in the program. And you are also probably familiar with these domain, okay? View, preference, belief. Even in program evaluations, most of the time evaluator will look into these subjectivity. This is the reason why Q can be used in program evaluation as it's focused on subjectivity, as we know. And as I mentioned before, this chapter is not research. So the purpose is to explicitly introduce Q methodology as a tool for program evaluation, and is meant to respond to a need for different approaches for language program evaluations, which involve various stakeholder. Because Q methodology can be designed in the way that it involves various stakeholders, not just students, but also instructor, program administrators, and students. And I did introduce the term called Q evaluation. When Q is used as a tool for program evaluations, I use this term Q evaluation, which is the term I use in this paper and my foreign studies. When it's come down to program evaluation in language research, Q can be used to evaluate different kind of course and program. For example, specific language courses like language for specific purposes. For example, English for communication purposes, English for professional purposes. General language courses like language courses that focus on building learner language proficiency, and even the whole program, like the whole program, and also language teacher training program, and even informal tutoring program. You can also use Q to evaluate this kind of program. And also, if you are focusing on a specific aspect of the program, for example, English medium instructions, you can also use Q methodology to do that. And I came to the conclusion that when it comes down to Q methodology in program evaluations, I would like to propose the goal of using Q for program evaluation, which is to identify strengths and weaknesses of the program. Because of the natures of data collection, we use forced distributions, right? That's why if we force them to say good things, if also force them to say negative thing about the program, that will lead to areas of where improvement is actually needed. Okay. And for the implications, I propose 5-step procedures of how Q methodology can be conducted. I know these steps look a lot like typical Q research, but there's just small differences, right? When it's come down to using Q evaluations, it's very important to define the purpose of evaluations, because the purpose of evaluation can vary from program to program, context to context, right? And whether it's to improve the program or whether it's to make specific decisions, we have to define the purpose. And another thing is we have to identify stakeholder. I would encourage the involvement of varieties of stakeholders in line with the principle of program evaluation, which is to involve different stakeholders. Actually, we can design a Q sample in the way that it can be completed with different stakeholders. Okay, and the rest was like typical Q research. And that's it for my chapter. Thank you so much for your time. And if you have any questions, this is my email.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ati. There's time for one short question right here now. Well, then I think Ati will respond to you via email if you have any questions at a later point. Thank you so much, Ati. Joe, go ahead.
Could Athit please put his email address in the chat? I want to send him a message.
Sure, definitely. Yes,
Thank
Joe.
you. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. So chapter number 10. Yunjin, are you ready for your presentation? Please go ahead.
Yes. Hello. Yes, I'm Park Hyun-jin, Jeonju University in South Korea. I'm glad to meet all of you at this online symposium. My chapter is on marriage, migrants, and the design of community interpretation and translation program. The reason I started this study is because Korea is increasingly becoming a multicultural and multilingual society. Korea has recently experienced a sharp increase in the immigrant population. The number of foreign residents in Korea is about 2 million, and among them, about 1.12 million are members of multicultural families, that is, families where one parent is Korean and the other a non-Korea citizen. The Multicultural Family Support Center is a governmental network that provides support to solve the problems faced by the increasing number of multicultural families in navigating Korean society. Among them, community interpretation and translation is a service that helps foreigners living in Korea when they communication needs. This study examines and analyzes the community interpretation and translation education curriculum from the perspectives of married migrants and community interpreters. Therefore, the purpose of this study is to deploy Q methodology to evaluate a course aimed at training community interpreters and translators to employ them in public service toward migrant wave in Korea. There are two research questions. First is, how do community interpreters evaluate the curriculum of community interpreter courses for migrant waves from both their own and the service recipients' viewpoint? Second is, how effectively can Q methodology be used to evaluate courses for community interpreters for migrant waves? Brown remarks that this design, which William Stevenson himself has widely demonstrated, allows the researcher to apply the penetrating power of factor analysis to the study of individual lives, and therefore allows the researcher to grasp more nuanced shades of the participants' subjectivity. This is why Q methodology was used, asking the same participants to search out the list of statements twice, once from their perspectives as interpreter and the other as migrant's wife. The Q sample consists of 34 statements, examples of which are as follows. 3 female married migrants participated in this study. 2 originally from Vietnam, Juhi and Eugene, and 1 from Mongolia, Sora. The participants were asked to sort the same Q sample twice. The first condition of instruction asks the participants to sort the statements from the perspective of the community interpreter. The second condition of instruction asks the participant to conduct the search from the perspectives of a migrant wife who received the service. As a result, a total of 6 souls were collected. As a result of an analysis, the 6 souls were clarified into 2 factors. Factor 1 increased the perspectives of Sora 1, Tree 1, and Tree 2. Factor 1 means the interpretation and translation curriculum should allow the interpreter to use Korean accuratively and develop expertise through practice. Factor 2 increase the perspectives of using 2, Sora 2, and using 1. Factor 2 means the role of counselors and the understanding of multicultural families are important aspects of the interpretation curriculum. The discussion touched the 4 points. First is an advanced level of Korean is required for accurate and fluent communication in Korean. And second is, third, there is not enough time for practice. And third, more counseling education is needed. Fourth is about methodology. It is possible to hypothesize that different perspectives regarding community interpreters training were affected by the degree of professional expertise and the interpreter's personal life experience, such as the experience in raising children. This is why known because the Q methodology was used. Therefore, this study makes 3 suggestions. There is a need to increase advanced Korean language education. The second is there is a need to increase the actual interpretation and translation practice time. And third, need for education that train counselors based on understanding multicultural families. Yes, if you have any question, please feel free to email. I finished my presentation. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much. There is time for a question here and now. So who would like to ask something about this chapter? Well, if there is no question here and now, we move on. Thank you so much for your presentation, Eugene. And Renata, you have the honor of presenting the final chapter in this book. So please go ahead.
Couldn't quite unmute myself as usual. Thank you, Adrian. Hello, everyone. I'm Renata, and I too would like to respectfully acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which I work and pay my respect to elders past, present, and emerging. My chapter looks at the way a group of school principals view languages education in Victorian primary schools. In terms of context and problem statement, languages education has been part of the Australian primary school curriculum for a very long time. And while each state and territory has its own language policy, there is no overarching national policy. And so languages programs are realised in very different ways across Australia. In Victoria, variety is a term that best describes the implementation of languages. Varieties in terms of, for example, language offerings, types of programs, and time allocation. When language programs were first offered in the early 1980s, the Victorian Education Department set several targets. And one of them was that by the year 2000, all students in Victorian primary schools would learn a language. Quite a hefty target was set. But since then, there has been a shift towards languages competency. So the focus has shifted from one of quantity of programs to one of quality. I believe that the way languages education is viewed by stakeholders really impacts on how programs are implemented. I also believe that school principals are responsible for the delivery of comprehensive and high quality programs to all students. Given this premise, the research question is, what are the viewpoints about languages education held by principals in Victorian primary schools that offer different models of languages programs? Why put Q methodology? That's really simple. A range of methodologies such as surveys, interviews, focus group has been used in research about languages education. What they have brought to light is recurrent themes rather than perspectives. In any endeavour, stakeholders must be aware of the different points of view that others have, so that there can be common ground and agreement on issues. Learning can occur and change can take place. Because I was interested in finding out the perspective of stakeholders, Q methodology was used because it's simply the best methodology to explore viewpoints of participants. As simple as that. Q sample and P set with our lovely picture. Having seen the impact that policy documents can have on the implementation of programs and on the school's discursive reality, the concourse was drawn from 44 policy documents spanning 30 years. Just under 300 statements dealing with recurring themes were selected. 48 statements covering a range of themes such as benefits, continuity, language choice, type of program, use of the target language, teachers and time allocation, just to name a few, form the Q sample. The P set comprised principals from 16 schools in the northwest region of Melbourne. This region was selected because it had the greatest number of Italian programs, and this was my primary interest. Of the 16 schools, 10 schools taught Italian, one of them in a bilingual program. 2 schools had taught Italian but were now teaching Japanese. 3 schools taught multiple languages, some European and some Asian. And 1 school taught multiple languages in an online program. In terms of the implementation, the program is ranged from 1 year, so very early stages, to very well-established programs with 22 years of implementation. Time allocation was 7.5 hours in the bilingual school and ranged from 45 minutes to 3 hours per week in the other settings. The 16 principals took part in a manual Q sort with a grade ranging from +5 to -5, and they responded to several cross-sort questions. And they also took part in a one-on-one interview about the language programs in their school. The sorts were collected and were entered in CADE for analysis, and I kept things very simple. I used PCA and Verimax rotation, and I was able to extract 2 factors. In terms of findings, overall, there was languages education was seen in a very positive light by these participants. There was consensus that languages are integral to the learning and they should be well resourced and supported. So everybody agreed on that. The group of 12 principals who shared the first viewpoint believed that in the benefits of, that is, the linguistic, cognitive, and cultural benefits that are inherent in language learning, and acknowledge the place of languages education within the primary school curriculum. Valuing languages and their place in the curriculum, they considered that they have a responsibility to provide all students with quality languages programs, which are well-resourced and where qualified linguistically proficient teachers are an important element. The second and smaller group, the 4 principals who share the second viewpoint, did not wish to have any one language prioritized, that is, neither European nor Asian language took priority. And they were very clear about what factors ensured languages programs were successful. They considered whole school support, qualified and proficient teachers, time on task, continuity on study, and the use of the target language as key elements. In fact, the importance of students being immersed in the language was paramount and specifically mentioned by this group. There seems to be an overall positivity towards languages education. This is not unexpected, given that languages have been part of the Victorian primary school curriculum for about 40 years. And Victoria has very favourable languages policies in place. The importance of qualified and linguistically proficient teachers was acknowledged by everyone. In their words, teachers make the program. But this aspect was of particular importance for the second group of principals. Teachers who are fluent in the language for them and the language that they teach are the most important things of this group of principals, who, when describing their ideal program, comment on the importance of students being immersed in the target language to achieve proficiency. Implication. I thought that Q had helped identify a small group of principals who appear open to taking the next step and introduce a program where the target language is prioritized and used as a medium of instruction. So if the education department in Victoria is interested in moving towards quality programs, it will be helpful to know the schools or principals are ready to take this next step and are willing to prioritize the use of the target language across the curriculum. This would lead to much more targeted allocation of funding and opportunities to increase the number of bilingual programs or clear programs where the target language is used to deliver content. And that is all from me, and thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Renata. Is there anybody who would like to ask a question to Renata? All right. That does not seem to be the case. Then I suggest we hereby conclude the part where we present the chapters. And let's see, I'll replace the sharing. So we were lucky enough to get a few reviews on this book. And first of all, we have a review which we have mentioned in the beginning, published in the journal System. I post the link to that review in the chat. But we also have 3 people that have reviewed the manuscript, and their reviews are on the back of the book. Some of these reviews say that it's a hat trick in language studies, and it's a groundbreaking work using Q and a collection of top-tier chapters. And you can read all those speech bubbles. And it's wonderful to hear those positive words about the book. We would like to thank all the reviewers of this manuscript, and we are very happy to have Osta Haukos here with us. Osta works at the University of Bergen, and she has written a review on the back of the book. I would like to give you, Osta, the floor and just say a few words about the book from your perspective as a professor of language education.
Thank you so much, Adrian, and hello to everyone. Yes, so first of all, I would like to congratulate you all on this fantastic book, I would say, and also on this webinar. I thought more than 2.5 hours so early in the morning for me will be too long, but I really was sitting here all the time looking forward to the next presentations. It was really done in a very good way, and it's an excellent idea to have like 10 minutes of structured presentations of each one. And when I was invited to read and review this book, I did so out of genuine curiosity, because I don't really see myself as an expert in Q methodology. I have been drawing on Q methodology earlier on, but now I was really curious to read more and to see the diversity of topics that appeared in the book and what I could learn from them. So I read each chapter with a pen and a piece of paper next to me, noting down ideas and thoughts about how I could use and draw on these studies also in my own context, also for my PhD students, master students, and so on. So I think that's actually also the success of the book, that you show the value of Q methodology, which you have also really shown very well today with all of these why Q methodologies. I don't think I will repeat any of that, because you had so many good reasons for doing so. But also the book itself really shows and gives ideas for others. So this thing about inspiring others, providing ideas for what to do in your own context is a very valuable one. I think there is also one aspect that I don't think you mentioned in all of your why Q methodology today that I would like to add, and that has to do with the ethical considerations of participants. Because I think very often we contact participants, we collect data from them, and then they don't really hear much from us after that. And we hope one day that they will read our article, but most often they don't. And we also try often to kind of give back by giving presentations or contacting schools, but not always. But I would also argue that being a participant in a Q methodology data collection process is of direct benefit to the participants. Because also in interviews, I think that can lead to a lot of awareness raising, to be invited to reflect on your own practices and beliefs. But perhaps even more when you have to do a Q sort, because then you don't only reflect on different questions that you are given by the interviewer, but also where do your different beliefs or the statements given relate to each other. You're kind of forced to sort them in a way and decide which ones are more true for you or more important, and so on. So I think that can actually increase the awareness raising process of being part of a study. So I think that's something that could potentially be explored more in future study, the ethical component and the amount of awareness that it provides for participants. I also want to acknowledge you for having this book. I know there's so much work behind it to be an editor. It's a lot of work, I know. It's back and forth. It's a very long process. And then you have all the excellent authors that have to listen to you, follow up on the deadlines and so on. So it's a big achievement, and now you can sit back and relax and enjoy the book and what will happen later on when people start reading it and use it and draw on it. So thank you very much and good luck.
Thank you so much, Åsta. Wonderful to hear those words. Let me just say at this point that we were extremely lucky with the contributors. It was not a difficult task to make them listen to us and submit manuscripts before or on deadlines. So we just pass that on to the authors of the chapters. Thank you so much. This leads over to the final part of this book symposium, our conclusion. And Renata, please just add your thoughts to it. I went back to the book and had a look at the contributions that we mentioned in the concluding chapter. We describe how Q offers a fresh perspective and demonstrated to be an invaluable tool to research in the field of psychology, language learning, and language teaching. And I think the presentations in that part one have illustrated that quite nicely. In part two, we described that Q contributed or contributes to a holistic understanding of teacher beliefs. And listening to all those presentations, I think the word complexity has been mentioned so many times. And with Q, we can, in fact, investigate the complexity and illustrate the holistic understanding of teacher beliefs. And part three, we describe how Q provided and provides guidance for the resolution of issues in language policies and educational planning. And I think that is well illustrated by the 3 chapters we had in the final part. If we summarize all of that or take it to a different level, we can also say that we illustrated how Q is flexible regarding the research design and the research focus in this book. We had small participant samples and we had large participant samples. Some of the chapters were pre-post intervention designs. Other had a more longitudinal design, research design in their study. We had a chapter with multiple conditions of instruction. We had a chapter with second order analysis and so on. We had conceptual papers combining Q with, for example, interviews and using Q for evaluative purposes. And what this all means is we need to stay true to the origins of Q methodology and make sure that the research process that we illustrate in the book and also show here on the slide is respected. At the same time, let's move forward and see how we can improve the system of using Q in research. What we would like to mention towards the end is part or step 5 in our research process, and that's contributing. And maybe, Åsta, what you mentioned with being part of the participant sample of a Q study is one aspect of connecting or giving back to the participant and to the community, the society. But we would like to stress that we intentionally added step 5 here because we think Q can generate so many new hypotheses and be the basis for real life applications that we shouldn't forget about those. This is why we do research after all. So looking forwards, well, we don't know where we're going with all of this, but the trend is clearly an increase in Q studies. But it's not just about quantity, it's also about quality. So let's make sure that we do good Q studies and describe what we do in detail so that reviewers and editors are happy to accept our manuscript after some revisions maybe. If you want to use that book as a reference, then maybe you want to order it, and I would like to just remind you that you have a 40% discount until the 15th of September with the code that you can see on the slide. We have recorded this symposium in 3 different parts, and if all the technicalities work, we will upload those 3 videos to our homepage qdownunder.org, and you will be able to access those videos there. So here's the link to the, let me see, to the homepage. You can already now go there and see who's part of that group and what kind of publications there have been produced from people, members of the group. And we've had a symposium Q Down Under, and there's supposed to be a second symposium Q Down Under. So stay tuned for that. This is the end of our event today. So thank you so much for being part of it. Renata, do you want to finish with your thoughts?
No, I think you've said it all. Just let's keep connected and let's keep doing good Q studies.
Yeah.
And
Wonderful.
thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.